Hi everyone. Thanks for joining today's session. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hear a little bit about what we've got to say today. We've no doubt we've got an exciting hour ahead where we hope you'll take some interesting learnings away and hopefully look at how you can apply innovation through your business, particularly when it comes around bringing net new talent into your organization. We've got a great panelists involved in today's session, so maybe a great place to start will be around introductions. I might kick off and then hand across to yourself, Narelle, followed by yourself, Richard. My name's Kyle O'Brien, and I'm the director for Revolent locally here in Australia. My background is around workforce development and been working across multiple technologies to really look at innovative ways that we can bridge the skills gap and look at designing and implementing talent solutions that are fit for purpose for today's workforce. You might see a poll pop up in front of you shortly, and maybe upon entry. Just keen to use that as a starting point to gauge where people's skills gap is within your organization, which will help to tailor conversations that unfold after this webinar takes place. But we're here to talk about everything and all the exciting things that relate to the Microsoft stack, and hopefully within today's session understand a little bit more about the need, the pain points that you're all experiencing, and talk about some solutions that are worth considering to help plug those gaps. My background has been in very much workforce development in the UK, but also Australia for the last 3 years, and I'm really excited as to lead our business and really look at doing something innovative. I'm a firm believer that innovation is about doing different things and doing things differently. So hopefully we're able to bring those to life within today's session. Narelle, I might pass across to you for a short introduction.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kyle. So I'm the lead for future skills initiatives at Microsoft across Australia, New Zealand, and lower APAC. And a lot of the role that I cover here and have been for the past 2 odd years is really looking at how do we create enough talent to service the need and the growth of our countries. So I work very closely with a lot of customers and partners within the Microsoft network to be able to really understand what is the shape of the workforce today, what does it need to be in the future, and how do we best propel talent through that ecosystem with the right skills. So I'll be telling you a little bit more about that as we go through today's session. But my background, I've also worked in workforce development probably over the last 20 years, a little bit older than Kyle. And it's been a mix of workforce development, but also technology and education. So really sitting quite comfortably in this sphere. So really keen to see what you guys have questions on today, but also to hear more about the MoneyMe example that we're going to be going through with Richard. So I might hand to you, Richard, to do some intros.
Thank you, Narelle. So mine's quite short. My name is Richard Williams. I'm the CIO of MoneyMe, which was also acquired a company called Society One, where I was the CTO about a year or so ago. My value has been building teams, technology. I'm a technologist by my nature, and the last 7 years I've been in senior positions where I've scaled up organizations across a variety of different technology stacks, which is kind of my cup of tea. And leading a bit about my experiences doing that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, thanks again, Narelle. Quick look at the agenda for today's session. We're going to hear from Narelle around what the Microsoft skills gap actually looks like, and hopefully get some insights there around some data that has been drawn from the team at Microsoft in partnership with some of their the Tech Council. Now, within today's session, there's going to be a number of topics covered, but I really want to make sure that we are making it as interactive as possible. So as we do unfold this session, please do use the chat function there. We'll be picking up your questions in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end for a bit more of a Q&A where we can answer those. So really want to make sure we're hitting the nail on the head. So please do feel free to engage with us. So we're going to hear a little bit from Narelle, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what Revolent are doing in this space, and hopefully offer some practical insights as to how you might be able to partner or look to leverage some of our thought leadership around talent development. And then we are going to finish off by hearing a live case study from Richard around how he has leveraged Revolent's model in order to help build capability at MoneyMe. And then, as I said, we're going to finish off by answering your questions from the chat. So without further ado, let's get started. Narelle, I might pass across to you to kick us off.
Yeah, great. Thank you. This probably isn't new news to you. The Tech Council of Australia has been very active, not only with government, but in industry as well, and communicating the size of the skills gap that we have in our country today. We're projecting to hit around 1.2 million tech workers by 2030. And to get there, we need to create a lot more jobs. So, and we're going to see that the jobs will be created, but will we have the workforce to sustain it is the biggest issue. And I'll show you on the next slide in a moment, just some of the breakdown of what that actually looks like. But to give you a feel, out of 653,000, there will be some organic growth. So we will still see students spilling out of education and coming through normal tracks as they traditionally do. There's not enough. You know, we have 7,000 IT or IT-related graduates graduating every year. So, you know, you do the maths, 7 over 7 years, it's only 49,000. So we're not going to hit the 653,000. There's also going to be an exodus out of the industry with retirements occurring as well. So just being aware that the challenges that you're finding today in terms of where you have your pinch points within your organization are probably going to exacerbate. The vacancy rate is currently sitting at 60%, which is higher than the national average. And the rate of job growth in our industry is 3 times of the national average as well. So whatever anyone else is feeling in your business in other divisions, you're going to be feeling it more in the tech team. So really important that you've got different strategies to be able to address that. And maybe, Manisha, if we move to the next slide, this is a slide that's actually come from a piece of research that was conducted by Accenture in collaboration with the Tech Council of Australia, and it breaks down that 650,000 workers. Where are they actually going to come from, and at what level, and in what capacity? So are they really at the fringe of technology, so really on that cusp, so more in the shared services line, or are they really hardcore into tech along that software engineering, data scientists, you know, that sort of line? So if you look at the diagram from left to right, it sort of does move across. Bulk shaded in dark blue, highly technical and professional. They're the hardest to find, right? So everything in dark blue is very high vacancy rates, difficult to find. Everything in the lighter shade will be a little bit easier. But we see it pop up in 2 pockets. You can see in the second column right at the very top, it's highly experienced people that are in tech-enabled roles. So people that are probably thinking about your Power Platform, Power Automate, building out capabilities to be able to manage projects cross-functionally. So how do they translate the needs of the business into the needs of the tech team and then be able to roll out projects at scale? And then on the far right-hand side, at every single layer, we're seeing whether you're new into career, whether you're in that mid-level, you have about 3 to 7 years experience, or even at that top echelon, 10 years plus, we're seeing there's critical shortages all the way through the funnel. And the thing that I love about Revolent, and one of the reasons why we've partnered with them, not just in Australia and New Zealand, but also globally, is because they take experienced IT talent, skill them deeply in a solution area, very specific solution area, and then propel them into the workforce. And they do this at the intermediate level. So we're really addressing that big block of 346,000 workers that we really need to address, that organizations are crying out for. And to be honest, when I sit down with our customer and partner network at a strategic level, they're not necessarily saying we have a problem with our entry-level talent pipeline. They find ways to be able to address that. It's really this intermediate talent pipeline that is the struggle, and everyone has it. And what they're finding is that as soon as they breed it, so if they bring in new talent at the entry level, they develop them, then they quickly exit the business as well, because it's very difficult to retain them. So anything to do to build, grow, retain is going to be really critical. And that is a core focus of the Revolent model. So we're super excited to be partnered with Revolent, new in country relatively in Australia, but doing some amazing work internationally. And I think there's some real opportunities here for Microsoft customers to be able to solve some of their critical skill shortages through this solution. So thank you for having us and for enabling us just to have this conversation, Kyle. I think it's really, really valuable, but I might hand back to you just to talk more through the Revolent model.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing those insights, Narelle, and providing that endorsement as to what we're trying to achieve. Because I agree, I think we're really addressing a significant difference in the market, and hopefully offering out throughout this session, offering you a chance to look at how you might be able to partner. Throughout the next couple of slides, I'm just going to unpack our business model in a little bit more detail and provide you with a very high level overview of how it works, and then a view of the different kind of training and enablement pathways that we can support you with. To Narelle's point, I started the business 3 years ago and have very quickly grown our business to what it is today. We've got about 90 people across Australia. However, very much feeding into about 500 globally. And, you know, we very much made the decision to start up our Microsoft business here in Australia after a lot of success in the US and also the UK. So we've very quickly been able to establish ourselves as a trusted partner of Microsoft around creating cloud talent. And to Narelle's point, we're doing that in a more of a unique way that we hope it will add value straight away. I'm actually going to take a look at the types of individuals that we're really targeting through a program like Revolent. And it's probably best explained with this career pyramid. We're not looking at graduates, we're not looking at apprentices or school leavers. We're very much focusing around those who have significant experience in IT professionals that might be working or building their career outside of Microsoft and have often wondered how they can transition their skills or careers and really bring with them transferable skills in order to succeed and project their career within Microsoft. So we're targeting 3 grades of individuals that are outlined on this slide. Our grade 1 individuals would typically have between 1 and 2 years of prior comparable commercial experience. Our grade 2 individuals would typically have 3 to 4 years of prior experience, and then our grade 3 rebels will have over 5 years. Now, I think one of the benefits that come with having these three levels is that we can really build squads that will produce different outputs according to their prior experience. And in turn, we are injecting very, very skilled resource that are able to hit the ground running and become hiring managers and leaders of the future. However, our business model is best explained over the course of these 4 key stages. So I just wanted to take a chance to unpack these at each stage so that you have a real in-depth understanding of how our program works. So we're typically hiring in cohorts or groups, and our cohorts are typically between 6 to 14 people at a time. And we're really hiring based on technical capability and also attitude and aptitude towards wanting to make a career switch. So our in-house talent acquisition team are really doing the heavy lifting and sourcing and screening individuals based on those 2 areas, and then shortlisting between 3 or 4 people for every 1 role that you have with us. And I put a couple of stats underneath the hiring phase. We are typically attracting those mid to senior careers switchers. So an average years of experience within our existing team is about 7.5. And in turn, we're really able to support that career transition at that stage, which for reasons that will become clear as we are, as I talk through the remaining phases. Worth mentioning here, we tailor the hiring based on your needs. So we'd really sit down with clients to say, what do those prior skills need to look like in order to be productive within your business? And that might be everything from collaboration tools that you use through to perhaps methodologies and whatnot from there. And so we would create we call it an ideal Revel profile with you, and that really guides our talent acquisition teams within the work that they do to make sure that they're finding someone who is really fit for purpose for your organization. From there, we would typically have a successful cohort whereby we would have our 6 or 14 rebels identified. Once they are the appropriate background checks have taken place, we would then commence our pretty intensive training boot camp, which is really focused around skills creation. And it's worth mentioning that these individuals are full-time employees of ours from day one. They are paid a salary from day one, and in turn, their training is fully funded by Revolent as well. So it's a very attractive career transition, a very attractive proposition to them as candidates, because there is no other business in Australia that is doing this kind of program, which is really taking away that commercial risk from them as candidates, as they don't have to take a salary cut. They can very much have 2 or 3 months to focus on training and upskilling solely. So the purpose of our training methodology, and perhaps where it differs from some other organization, is that we're really heavily focused on practical application of skills as opposed to knowledge and theory. So I'm a firm believer that training plus application equals competence. And so we really try to integrate that within our training methodology as we unfold. So we're an authorized training partner of Microsoft's, and in turn we are using certified trainers and very much delivering a full-time training program that is built around achieving certifications, but to my point earlier, really focusing on that practical capability. And we do that through a number of ways, typically use case training. We try to make sure that we litter use case training throughout, so that we can be testing their ability to articulate their skills, as opposed to just relying on exams, which, if I'm honest, I think exams tell us is a very good sign of capability. However, we've seen a lot of success when it comes to actually doing the work, because we are warming them up through a training boot camp with these practical assessments throughout. We have high industry-leading first-time certification pass rates, which I think is testament to the training methodology that we do use. I think it's also important to point out that, yes, technical certifications do play a part. We put an equal measure on soft skills throughout that as well. So we're typically building workshops that are built around organization, communication, collaboration, and communication, so that we really want to make sure that throughout this training boot camp, which is typically running for 8 to 12 weeks, that we're really fine-tuning and shaping an individual that can be productive as soon as they land in your business. So there is an element of customization that can be done throughout the training phase as well, where we have partnered with organizations that want to parachute in and deliver workshops that are associated to their own internal L&D function. That's absolutely fine. We just sit down within our consultation phase up front to look at what those training modules looks like and how we can best fit them in. So once at the end of that 3-month period, they're fully certified, fully capable, and then we work with organizations like yourself to really build that project or work experience from there. So we're working with employers of all kinds, both from the consulting realms, but also directly with end users like yourselves. And we are supplying them on a time and material basis, so they remain on our headcount. However, they should look and feel like your employee, and throughout that deployment phase, we are very much there to support you and support the individual throughout a period of 2 years. And throughout that 2 years, we are coaching, providing that professional development coaching in partnership with you to make sure that the individual's skills are continuing to progress throughout that placement. Now, throughout the 2 years, we want to make sure that we are building their skills as much as we can to be fit for purpose for your business, because what we're really working up towards is them converting into your full-time headcount at the end of that 2-year period. Now that is an ideal scenario. However, the individuals that come onto our program are under no assumption that that is a guarantee. It's very much based down to performance and also, you know, the business stance at the end of that 2-year period. And then what we expect is after we've been able to really find, shape, and grow their skills over a longer period of time, that Revolent will be seen very much as injecting skilled, very skilled resource into our ecosystem, and in turn flip the dial on that talent crisis that we are seeing over the last couple of years, particularly here in Australia. That provides a nice overview of those 4 phases. And please do feel free to use the chat function there if there is any further information you need. However, I just thought it'd be worth highlighting what products, what kind of skills we're really working across that might be able to, as you cast your eye through this list, hopefully you can see where the training pathways might relate to the skills you need or you're looking to build in-house. I thought it'd be helpful just to provide an example of what a training pathway might look like. This example is a D365 F&O consultant. And as an example of what we've been doing with a consulting partner, we've really tailored that hiring phase to look at bringing in accountants who really have that deep expertise in finance, and really putting them on a very comprehensive pathway that looks to cross-train their skills into the Microsoft stack and very much be able to hit the ground running and productive from day one. The phase 1, as you can see there on the left, just highlights some of the key training pathways. However, also certifications that they're really working towards throughout that initial 3-month training bootcamp. And then they would be deployed in between phase 1 and phase 2. And then, to my point earlier, we would continue to support the individual in your business to make sure that their learning journey or professional development journey continues to evolve over the course of that 2-year program. And typically, this is the learning journey that we would see one take. If, for example, the functional consultant associate cert at around about that 6 to 8 month mark, followed by that architect, solution architect certification, perhaps towards the end of their journey. But really, we want to make sure that skill foundation is very solid. To my point earlier, we are growing and together with our employers, growing and building those leaders of the future. And perhaps we can conduct a bit more of a informal Q&A to really talk about your experience and also hopefully share some insights with your peers from other organizations on this call today. So maybe start with Richard. It'd be good if you perhaps set some context, maybe give an overview of who MoneyMe are, and perhaps a little bit about the business challenges at the time of engaging with the likes of Revolent.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, so MoneyMe, I've been around almost 10 years now. They're one of the leading money lenders for things like car loans, personal loans, all that sort of thing on the market, where they have competitive rates across the whole industry. Now, my history with MoneyMe comes back from my history with Society One, which was bought by MoneyMe only about a year ago. But the problems there, it stems back to, are the same problems that sort of grew with how the business has grown. So if you go back a few years, we had a particular pain point in our organization that we were growing fast, but didn't have particularly skilled or the right skills in the team that we're growing. In particular, certain technologies, SaaS platforms, were still relatively new, and there wasn't a huge amount of people, especially in Australia, to fill those roles. So as we're only about 100 plus 3 years ago, we needed to grow fast. The technology had to keep up to date with the growing demand in the business itself, which means in some ways working smarter, not harder. And then we just found out that certain areas were keenly missing people that we really needed to challenge. So looking at that, we had to keep our costs down at the same time. So you accelerate them at the same time, keeping your costs down. So moving fast, needing people quickly, and then the person that we need has to be running from day one. So, you know, a business of that size going up to that size with those requirements is the major challenge that we have.
Awesome. And perhaps worth touching on some of your own reasons, highlighting why you chose Revolent as a potential solution, and maybe more broadly looking at the hire, train, deploy model, and maybe some of the successes you've seen with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer to me choosing Revolent, because personally, I've been in a kind of a recruit to train model in the past, where I was a person who actually was the staff that was recruited by the employer, and we had to be skilled up, and then we dropped into effectively a new, this is back in the .NET days where everyone was going from flat client systems into thin client. Web was very, very new, and everyone had to be trained. So we had the same philosophy. And this is where Revolent can be really useful, is that, well, actually, when this came along, I thought, well, it worked for me, it will definitely work for my team. So having someone who is pre-trained but being cross-skilled and had experience from a previous, and that's what you're looking for, is that experience of IT. It doesn't have to be the same skills, but they've been cross-trained into something else, makes it a very powerful employee or future employee. So to me, it's a sort of win-win for the employer and employer, that they get to learn a new technology and be embedded in an upcoming fantastic, you know, fast-moving startup with new technology, and we're getting someone who has experience of using technology and building, and then able to use that to work with your team. You know, it's not about so much the skills, it's about, a lot of it's about the attitude, and we're getting that attitude, which was fantastic. So getting that, you know, choosing Revolent as a solution was then easy, because then we could choose from a variety of people who had the skills, and we can their motivation would come across in the interviews, as we were kind of expecting to find. It was great.
Absolutely. And you know, people sometimes have a misconception around what net new talent bring, first from a skill level, but if we look at that pyramid, typically looking that they stay and hover on that entry level route. I wonder whether you could kind of demystify some of the maybe preconceptions there to look at your experience there with hiring someone in that net new capacity, and maybe talking about you know, what they can actually do, but more importantly, maybe the evolution of their role over the course of 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, one of the people that we actually had, and this was a few years ago, so this is showing the journey that person made. They started out in that kind of like more junior side, but what we found is that they had a certification that were happening in the background. They were learning the platform, so they came on. They had someone that they worked with, and they were able to pick up speed. So we had previous people, contractors even, and we just found they weren't very sticky, they weren't enamored to what we were trying to achieve. And then having that kind of, they had clear goals. So it was quite clear that the people came on board had objectives of their own, and also because eventually they would join our team, it just all made sense. So it became sticky by the concept of, yes, they're learning that platform and they're bringing that commercial value to the organization. So, you know, having someone who is actually keen to learn the platform. And I think what experience I found is that, especially if you've got a really interesting industry, that will also help find people to come and join you. So the tech shortage is alone, doesn't even matter on tech, you're gonna have someone you need to recruit. But if you've also got a very interesting business, that also really helps as well, especially if they're keen to learn, especially in my sector, which is fintech.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, I think there's a lot of transferable knowledge from industry, right? And I know when we were first working with you, we sat down and looked at fintech more broadly and looking at the value in trying to find someone with a fintech background that really shared that passion and saw that value in the objective of your overarching business. And I think to other organizations who might be operating in a different industry, I think that's just worth pointing out that the tailoring of that hiring really can get as specific as industry, because there's no underestimating the value that brings to productivity and thought leadership. That's for sure. I wanted and maybe an opportunity to talk through any advice that you would give to organizations on the call or listening who are maybe looking at doing something similar. Keen to sort of unpack that and look at what top tips you have in store.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I really feel that everyone should be open to a new approach to how to recruit people. They're tried and tested, direct or through a recruitment agency, works to a certain degree. But with this kind of models, especially, I've always found that when you're recruiting people, the first thing you want to do is retain that person. And a lot of cost comes from losing and that retention of someone who's around for 6 months just because they want to be there to get X amount of money before they move on. And everyone's had that. They've had people join an organization just to use it as a launch pad for somewhere else, just to get their name under the door or just to get a certain skill. That in itself causes issues with costs and also just people's effort of actually having to train them up. Recruitment cost, you ask anyone in HR, it's a major headache that they have all the time. This approach worked really well because we don't have to worry about that. That person is really going to be sticky, definitely for 2 or 3 years. They're not going to go anywhere. They've already made their career plan, so it's a win-win at that point of view. You have that backing that Revolent's always going to support them as well as you, so they get double support. Whereas an individual coming another channel would effectively only get either their own support or a recruiter, which generally just likes to handball off and move on to the next person anyway. So you get that kind of real support network coming through, and I think that's really important. And you talk about certification. Yes, it is important because that motivates them to learn more as well. And also there are things you can learn from certification that you wouldn't necessarily on job, but by all means, having that person that learns your system, they're also more likely to stay with you because they've learned that system. So yeah, it doesn't replace a lot of those things, but cost is a big factor. Plus having a happy employee.
Absolutely, and I think you touched on that perfectly around ensuring that there is that values alignment between our business and your business. And that's certainly something that was evident. And when there is that perfect harmony, it certainly makes for a very good learning journey, and to your point, employee as well. And Revolent is very fortunate to have these great partnerships across multiple organizations, and I certainly see it as a benefit that we both have equal skin in the game to make sure that these learners are successful. Great. That's been really helpful, Richard. And I really wanted to, I guess, conclude the webinar at this stage, and really open the floor for any questions. I'm conscious we've talked through a number of topics during the last 40 minutes, and hopefully it hit the mark, and hopefully you got something out of it that you wanted coming into it. There's another poll up in front of you here, which just helps us to understand a little bit more about your talent needs. If you can complete that, that would be helpful. And certainly we can field these questions as they come in. As we are sort of waiting for some of those questions, I thought it might be useful just to highlight what those next steps might look like if you did want to engage in conversations around how this program might work for your business. To our point, there is an element of customization here that really we need to go through together to make sure that the program is fit for purpose. So next step immediately after this would be to sit down and look at what pathway, what product you're specifically looking to build skills within, and highlight a suitable training pathway to equip the person with the right certifications and capability to be successful in that job, followed by customizing that talent acquisition piece through creating an ideal Revel profile that I highlighted at the start of this session. Those two topics would be important to cover off as a starting point, and then followed by a mutual success plan, which just supports the successful implementation of a talent program like Revolent across your business, and bring the right stakeholders in to make sure there is that endorsement and support from the top down. From there, see there's one question that's come into the chat here. Thanks, Stanita. Any scope for Canadian candidates? There is actually. We're working our US and Canada arm is in operation there. Certainly working across the entire Microsoft stack that I highlighted earlier. So if that's helpful, perhaps I can do an introduction there after this call, just so that you can commence those next steps and conversations with the folks in that region. I'm not sure what time it is in Canada, but if you are based there, I'm impressed that you managed to join. So thank you for that. I always think that this time of the day it's either really early or really late wherever you are. Another question that's come in there: does Revolent give opportunity for entry-level candidates who are interested in building career in D365 CRM, or people that are looking to switch career? Absolutely. I think the latter is a part of our DNA, taking these career switches and really offering that comprehensive pathway to cross-train those skills. And so we would typically work with our employers to customize what that needs to look like. This solution is very much employer-led. So we are led by them around the who. However, typically, if we look across the folks that we've got on our program at the moment, typically, there isn't someone who is completely green. I'd say our most junior resource that we'd bring on would probably have 2 years of comparable experience, be that in SAP, Oracle, or perhaps Java developer, for example. However, there are a number of organizations out there, of which I'm sure Narelle works with, who are really focused on those ground zero graduate or entry level roles. So I'm sure Narelle will be able to signpost according there, if you'd like to either send her a LinkedIn message or direct email via us.